So there are other kind of proofs. So they have the same basic structure. Um, but for a triangle proof, you're trying to find when you have two triangles, you want to show that all the sides, like the segments AB, BC, and AC, this has three sides, matches the three sides on this one. So they should be congruent. And you want to know that all the angles are congruent. That's what it means when the two triangles are the same, yeah? All the angles are the same, all the sides are the same, okay? And we don't have to show that they're all the same. When we did this thing, we did all these drawings, and then we looked at them and we said, okay, if I know all the sides are the same and I draw all the sides, that's enough. All the angles are going to be the same. And so if I have two triangles, whatever it looks like this, or two separate ones, if I can show like this side maybe and this side are the same, maybe it's this side and this side, this side and this side, then I know that the two triangles are the same because all the three sides are the same. And that's what side, side, side means. Okay? And we can do that with any of these. If I show that maybe it's this side and this side, and this angle with this angle, and this side with this side. So this would be side, angle, side. Then that way you can see that by looking at one triangle. And we practiced this before. You got to make sure they follow each other. When you look at a side, you can't go this direction because you have to have like the next side or angle. So if I have this side, and I know when you look at one triangle, and you're trying to figure out if it's side, angle, side, or whatever it is, let's say it's this angle here, and you have that angle, and you're trying to say, okay, can I go this direction or this direction? If you have this angle here, and the only thing you can do is the next angle or the next side. So if I skip this side, then that means that the next one I'm going to talk about is this angle. So from here to here is okay. You can go from here to here. It's the next angle. Okay? And then you can go to the next side. Let's say you go to this side here. Okay, you have to imagine there's another triangle over here. Okay? There's another triangle. To figure this out, just look at one triangle. Because if you look at both, it can be confusing. This is already difficult enough, I think. Okay, so when I'm looking at this, no matter where I start, see here, if I start here, I cannot go and say this angle or this side, because from this angle, I have to go to this side here or to this angle here. Do you guys see what I mean by sides and angles? So I have to hit this one or this one, okay? One of the two. So here, if I don't get this one, I have this one. Then from here, I do the same. I can get this or the angle. So this would be okay like this. We are skipping. It feels like we're skipping a side because we're like, well, if I can skip this side, why can I skip this side and call this side angle side? Why can't I go this way? Because you can skip one but not both. Okay? So if you go in this direction, you would be skipping this and this. Yeah? So you cannot do that, and so you can't go angle, side, angle like this in this direction. That you cannot do. Okay? You have to go in this direction and go, oh, next is an angle, and then after the angle is a side. Because you'll be okay as long as you don't skip an angle, a side and an angle. Does that make sense? Okay. All right. We've done this one before. I can put another. Do you guys think you need more help identifying these side, angle, side? I can put up a delta math. You know what? I'll put an optional, like, extra credit delta math on there. So you can practice this. Okay? If that's what you need. All right, next. Okay, so that's what we're trying to do, is we're trying to find three things. Okay? We're trying to find three things. And they're sides and angles. Okay? They're sides and angles. One of them is hypotenuse leg. And that would mean we would need a right angle, a hypotenuse, and the leg to be congruent. But this is still, these are both sides. So anytime you're going to be looking for those things, okay? So you are looking for something where you have an angle or a side. And you need any combination of three of these to be able to show the triangles are congruent, which is what we're trying to do. You need a combination of these three of these. It could be, it can be three of these. It can be two of these and one of these. And really it doesn't, when you start, it's not going to matter. You just find them, okay? And then after you're done finding them, and then you figure out which one is it. Is it side, side, side? Is it side, angle, side? Angle, angle, side? Da-da-da. You look at the shape, and then you figure it out. But you need to focus on finding congruent angles and congruent sides. Okay? Does that make sense? All right. So, and you need three. And then, okay? So, to find congruent angles. Oh, where's my paper? They're all on that little paper. Yeah. That you were handed, this thing. Okay? And I created this trying to help you out so you have all the information. And I keep thinking, oh, maybe I should have done it a little bit different. So I want you guys to mark these up, Okay? So this one here, these, pick one color or something. If you look here, this one is going to give you, and you know they're together, there's two of them together, right? So notice this one is going to give you angles. This is angles, this is angles, this is angles. I haven't given you an example. We haven't done this one, a reflexive angles. Not going to do that. Angles, angles. Okay. So these are the ones that give you congruent angles. Okay? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And mostly we use these. Okay? And this one is going to give you congruent segments. And that's it. That's all we're using. There are other ways to get congruent segments. Okay. So besides what's on here, okay, the other way to get congruent segments or congruent angles are the ones that are given. And that's it, okay? So everything is on here, yes. Okay. So let's look and see how this works, okay? So the pink ones are the ones that give you, but when you do, to use a pink one, you have to have that first part of this. So here, if you want these congruent angles, you have to have parallel lines. Okay? And so basically, let me show you what this would look like. Let me show you what that would look like in a proof form. Yeah? So somewhere up here, you would have to be given that there's two segments that are parallel. If you don't have that written somewhere, you may not use it, even if they look parallel. Okay? Even if they look parallel, you cannot use it unless it says they are. So if you have this, okay, then you look at your shape and you find the parallel segments. So if you're given this, you're going to look for look at the diagram, and you want to find the parallel lines wherever they are. That's a symbol for parallel. And depending on what you need, so there should be a line going from one to the other, and it could be a line going in this direction or this direction. Okay? So let's say it's a line going from here to here. That's your transversal. Then you can say, so let's say this angle here, that this angle is congruent to this angle. So let's put some letters on there. And I'm going to put a point right there. This is, let's say this is X, and this is Y. Let's say that's A, and that's B, and we'll call this point P. Okay? So you look at the diagram, and you find the angles you need. So you have to find either this ones, or if it's going this way, you got to find them. If you need help identifying those, please let me know. We'll do some. You have notes on this. It should be in your notebook. You have a whole list of these, okay? Okay, so then what you would write, so for your proof, you would write you would have two boxes. And then you would have XYP, angle XYP is congruent to angle BAP. And the reason is because you have this whole thing over here, this parallel thing, parallel lines cut by a transversal form, congruent alternate interior angles. We did interior angles. So we would use this whole reason here, and we would put that here, okay? I'm not going to write the whole thing because it doesn't fit, and you have it there already. So parallel lines, dot, 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 alternate interior angles. Okay? So you guys know what I'm talking about? It's this whole thing here. Is that okay? Okay. Now, if you are using this reason here to say these are congruent, and you say here parallel lines give you this, you better have parallel lines above this. Okay? So that's the thing. If the reason states that parallel lines give you the congruent angles, then you better show which lines on your diagram are parallel. So if you use this, that better be there. Okay? You have to show, if you're saying that parallel lines give you congruent angles, then you got to go, well, where are your parallel lines? Okay? If you're using that reason, you got to say, okay, well, where are your parallel lines? Oh, well, they were given to me right there. This says they were parallel. So I write it down. X, Y is parallel to AB. And then, whatever reason here, this reason better have a reason up above it unless it's given. If it's given, if it's vertical angles, or if it's reflexive, you don't have to have the reason above. That is enough. Okay? So all of these here work the same way. If you're using this as your reason to get this, then above it you better have that. So if you're going to use that there's these two parts that are congruent because you figured that out because of a midpoint thing, then in the box above you better say where your midpoint is. And notice here reflexive, all you saying is you have these and you say reflexive, that's enough. Okay? You don't have to have another box showing somehow how they're reflexive and explanation. This is enough. You don't have to do that for reflexive, vertical angles, and given. Everything else has to have a box above. Okay? Does that make sense? Yeah? Okay. Sometimes there are things that have more than one box. So notice this one here and this one here. Notice this does not give you, if you look here, if you have perpendicular lines, do you see that you don't get congruent angles here? You get right angles, not congruent angles. Okay? So let me show you what that's going to look like. Okay? And in fact, let me see, we have perpendicular lines on number 8. So let's look at that one. Okay? Is that okay, guys? All right. In fact, let's just do number 8 so you can see how the boxes are going to work. Okay. So you're given D is a midpoint of AC. That's going to need an extra box. You're given these are perpendicular. This is going to be actually 3 boxes because this does not give you congruent angles. It gives you right angles. Okay? So, so let's write all our given and our reflexive, and then we'll put the boxes underneath. Is that okay? So I'm just going to write this down since I have it. D is the midpoint of AC. And that is given. Okay, don't scrunch your boxes all the way up, guys, because then you can't see where they're going. All right? because you're going to need another box and another box right here. Okay, notice this. So we look at, we're given that, and then the midpoint here gives us congruent segments. And see, this is on the top box next to it. The bottom box better have congruent segments. Okay, let's find those congruent segments. D is a midpoint of AC. So you find AC. There's AC. Then you mark the midpoint. And this works for bisector too. For the bisector, you're going to mark the bisector. All it does is tell you where the midpoint is. Okay? That's all it does. So mark your midpoint. Okay. Then let's mark your congruent segments. Your congruent segments is going to be on your, it's got to be on AC. And they're going to be, ones are going to be on one side of the midpoint, the other one's going to be on the other side of the midpoint, and those are your congruent segments. Okay? So, here's AC, because that's what was bisected or we have the midpoint of. And you look at AC, not any of the other lines. Don't worry about any of the other lines, okay? And then you go on one side of the midpoint and the other side of the midpoint. Those are the ones that are congruent. Okay? So we go from, this is AD and this one is DC. So that's what we write. AD congruent to a DC. And then you write this whole thing. A midpoint divides a segment into two congruent segments. And if it has midpoint, you look. Do you have midpoint up there? So if this says midpoint, just check, make sure. If this says midpoint, you better have midpoint up here. And we're good. We now have one congruent segment. That's good enough right there. Okay, I am also given that AC is perpendicular to BD. I'm given that information. I'm going to just go ahead and write it down. Since it doesn't hurt anyways, I'm just going to write it down. AC, segment AC is perpendicular to segment BD. And that is given. And then I'm going to look over here, and I'm looking for perpendicular. And there it is. You can see the sign right there, and the words are right there. And what does this give me? It gives me right angles. And that's it. So you cannot write anything else underneath. So your next box should say right angles. So I'm going to find so AC and BD are perpendicular. So this is a right angle and that's a right angle right there. When you have perpendicular lines, those are your right angles. Are we good? So I know this is angle X and angle Y. It says that these are right angles, and there's only one letter, but you can't use angle D because there's two of them. Angle ADB and angle BDC are right angles. And what is my reason? Because perpendicular lines form right angles. Okay, you need another box here because you don't have anything congruent at this point. Okay, so, but I'm not sure. See, right angles, you can go and get, if you have right angles, you can get congruent angles. But if you have right angles, you could also use this and get right triangles. So after this box, you have a choice. You have a choice to put down congruent angles or right triangles. Okay? So you have to look at your picture. And then at this point, you really got to start kind of thinking about which one of these is it going to be. Because this can give you congruent angles, but it can also give you this triangle, a right triangle right here. Okay? So if you look here, this is a hypotenuse. I don't have a way of showing that the hypotenuse are congruent. So it's not going to be this one. So I don't need right triangles. So what I'm going to need here is that these angles, angle ADB, is congruent to angle BDC because all right angles are congruent. So you see here, if I say all right angles are congruent, that comes from here. I have all right angles. How do I have all right angles? Because I have perpendicular lines, which is here. So you can always, whatever reason you find, unless it's given reflexive or vertical angles, if you have it here, you should have it here. Like, where in your picture is it? And it should be up here. It should be given or somewhere in your picture above. Okay? And then the last thing, I know you're packing up. That's okay. I think this is a video, so I'm going to finish this and put it online. So let me finish this real quick. So the last thing on here is, if you'll notice, both of these have BD. That is reflexive. So you say BD is congruent to BD. And that is reflexive. You don't need anything above that. You've got a side here. You have an angle. And you have a side. And if you'll notice on your triangle, you have side, angle, side. And you're practically done.